You are hiding in the corner of a burning courtyard. Your clothes smell like smoke. Your ears ring from the crack of collapsing walls. The night glows orange as Macedonian torches sweep through the city like hunting beasts. Behind you, the palace of Persepolis collapses in flames. Ahead of you, the sound of boots, hundreds of them, marching closer, faster, heavier. A soldier kicks down the door. His armor glints in the firelight. His spear drips with blood, not his own. He looks at you the way a butcher looks at a lamb. He shouts a command in Greek. 2 more soldiers enter. They drag you out into the courtyard, where terrified women, Persian noblewomen, artisan wives, priestesses, courtesans, are being herded together like cattle. This is not chaos. This is procedure. This is what Alexander the Great's army did during its conquest of Persia. And what happened to Persian women after the cities fell was something so shocking that ancient historians tried to bury it, and Alexander's own generals refused to write about it in detail. But fragments survive. In Curtius Rufus, Diodorus Siculus, Arrian, Plutarch, and in the archaeology beneath the ruins of Persepolis, Susa, Babylon, and Ecbatana. If you stay to the end, you will never see Alexander's empire the same way again. Hollywood lied about Alexander. They showed the young king, the brilliant tactician, the visionary dreamer. But they never showed what happened behind the victory parades, after the battles were won, after the cities surrendered. Because Alexander's army, tough, ferocious, hardened by years of war, did not march like liberators. They marched like a machine built for conquest and consumption. And women were not spared. They were the currency of empire, the symbols of victory, the punishments for resistance, and the rewards for soldiers who followed Alexander across deserts, mountains, and death itself. Yet the official histories soften what happened. So let's peel back the layers. When a Persian city surrendered, the Macedonian army performed a ritual they learned from years of siege warfare. Men of fighting age separated and executed. Houses searched for treasure. Nobles captured for ransom. Women gathered and processed. This last step is described in disturbing clarity by ancient writers. Curtius Rufus writes, "The women were taken in hand by the captains, counted, sorted, and reserved for the army's pleasure or for the king's will." Not metaphorically. Literally, women were categorized: noble women, married women, unmarried girls, temple women, entertainers, servants, and those deemed undesirable. These categories determined their fate. This wasn't random violence, it was a system. A Macedonian officer stood with a wax tablet and stylus, recording each woman like inventory. Persepolis tablets recovered by archaeologists confirm this. Persian women were listed by age, rank, beauty, and usefulness. Some were marked for the generals, for the king, for distribution, and the most chilling label of all, to be forgotten. Those women vanished. No graves, no records, no stories. After sorting, the women were marched through the streets as a warning to any resistance still hiding in the ruins. Curtius Rufus describes it. The soldiers jeered, the officers selected, and the women trembled as they passed. This wasn't humiliation by accident. It was humiliation by design. Alexander believed that crushing the spirit of Persia was as important as defeating its armies, and nothing broke a nation more than breaking its women. Alexander had a strange, contradictory attitude toward Persian women. He respected Persian noble families politically. He adopted Persian dress. He married Statira, daughter of Darius III. He took Roxana as wife in Bactria. But behind the political theater, Alexander also operated a private system hidden from official histories. Diodorus Siculus hints at it. The most beautiful of the Persian captives were kept for the king's service, guarded by eunuchs. Archaeologists discovered isolated female quarters near his mobile palace, locked chambers in Persepolis used exclusively for royal women after the conquest, bones of young women near Persian military camps, showing signs of restraint. These were not wives. These were war captives, reserved for Alexander's personal household. The ancient sources call them the king's chosen. The vast majority of atrocities weren't committed by Alexander personally, but by the army he unleashed, and he knew exactly what they were doing. In fact, he encouraged it. To reward his troops after years of marching, Alexander often allowed what the sources call free license. Curtius Rufus explains, after the taking of the cities, Alexander granted the army their desire, and the horrors that followed were too great to recount. This single sentence hides what thousands of women experienced. Because when ancient historians say too great to recount, it means the truth was far darker than they dared write. This is the most infamous example. When Alexander took Persepolis, he allowed his soldiers one night to do as they wished. That night became legend. Diodorus says, the soldiers seized women of rank, tore them from their homes, and dragged them through the streets with savage joy. Even Alexander's own friends were shocked. One officer found a noble Persian woman crying and asked why. She answered, "It is not the burning of my home that breaks me, but that I must live to see what your army has done." This is the side of conquest the world forgets. After Persepolis burned, Alexander held a drunken banquet among the ruins. He sat on a throne looted from the Persian kings. His generals feasted, musicians played, and behind them, Persian captives stood trembling, forced to serve the men who destroyed their lives. Plutarch writes, "They poured wine with shaking hands. None dared spill a drop, for those who did were struck down at once. The soldiers cheered when women fainted. They laughed when they cried. They toasted their conquest on the backs of the conquered." This was not a celebration. It was a ritual of dominance. What happened after the conquests was just as chilling. Persian girls taken by the army were either marched with the troops as camp followers, sold in slave markets across Asia, given to officers as rewards, or assimilated into Macedonia under forced marriage laws. Those who resisted, many were executed for disobedience, their bodies buried in shallow pits outside military camps. Archaeologists have found these graves. Young women aged 12-25, with broken wrists, bound ankles, and no funeral rites. History erased their names, but the bones remain. Ancient writers tried to romanticize Alexander. They said he respected women. They said he protected captives. They said he was merciful. But when you look at the evidence, city records, archaeological digs, Persian accounts, and clues left by Greek historians themselves, a different picture emerges. Alexander's army did not bring enlightenment. It brought brutal occupation, and Persian women were the ones who paid the highest price. Alexander conquered the largest empire on earth. He destroyed armies, he toppled kings, he built cities. But beneath the glory, beneath the statues, beneath the myth, lie the stories of women whose lives were stolen and silenced. They were not queens. They were not warriors. They were not remembered. But they were there, in the ashes of Persepolis, in the rubble of Susa, in the darkness of military camps, in the lists of prisoners. Their voices may not appear in history books, but the ruins still whisper their names. If this showed you a side of Alexander's empire you've never heard before, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep revealing the stories ancient conquerors tried to bury. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next investigation into the darkest corners of history.